I knew something was wrong the moment they opened the door, long before either of them tried to speak. A woman my age doesn't need an explanation when the truth sits heavy in the room, waiting to be noticed. And at 79, that instinct sharpens into something almost painful. You feel the warning in your bones before your mind fully understands what you're looking at. The room was small enough that I could stretch both arms and nearly touch each wall. No window, a narrow cot pushed into the corner, a flimsy nightstand, a single lamp flickering every time the hallway door swung shut. The door itself was thin as paper and placed directly across from the laundry room, where the dryer hummed like something trapped and restless. Carol stood beside me smoothing her blouse, her tone cheerful in that practiced way that tries too hard. "If you still want to stay, it's just temporary until you're back on your feet." Back on my feet. As if a fractured hip heals faster when you tuck an old woman beside a detergent shelf. Daniel hovered behind her, pretending to adjust the thermostat. My son, my only child. A man who once brought me dandelions from the yard and cried when one of them wilted in his pocket. Now he couldn't look directly at me. Just days earlier he'd said, "Of course you'll stay with us, Mom. Your family." But families don't offer storage closets dressed up as guest rooms. Families don't place you beside a washer where the heat thickens into suffocating air at night. I didn't complain. 40 years in hospitals taught me the difference between what people do out of duty and what they do from the heart. This was duty. Thin, brittle, cracking at the edges. "I'll manage," I whispered, placing my small overnight bag on the cot. The metal frame groaned under the weight, as if offering its own opinion. Carol smiled quickly, politely. "We'll let you rest. Dinner's at 6. If you're too tired, I can bring you a plate." She hesitated. "Just maybe keep the door closed. The laundry steam can spread." She didn't need to spell out what she really meant. I'd overheard her yesterday when she thought I wasn't nearby. Old people have that smell. It sticks to fabrics. When they left, I exhaled the way I used to after long night shifts, quietly, so no one thinks you're breaking. The air felt stale, heavy with detergent and the faint metallic scent of the bed frame. I sat carefully, the mattress dipping unevenly beneath me. And in that moment, I remembered the home I'd walked away from 3 weeks earlier, the one Daniel insisted was too big for someone your age. My own bedroom with soft sunlight each morning. Peach curtains my husband and I picked out decades ago. A view of the garden, a room that was warm, familiar, mine, and now a cot beside a humming dryer. I closed my eyes as the ache rose, not in my hip, but deep under the ribs where disappointment builds a nest. I had imagined mornings with my son, small conversations over coffee, the comfort of family close by. Instead, I felt like a guest already overstaying the hour I'd arrived. 10 minutes later, a knock, quick, sharp. "Mom," Daniel's voice tight at the edges. "Just checking, everything all right in here, as though I were quarantined." "It's fine," I said, staring at the blank wall. "I'll manage," he lingered. I could hear the shift of his shoes, an old habit from when he carried guilt at 8 years old, after breaking the neighbor's window. At 17, after failing a test. At 51, I wondered if guilt still tasted the same. "You know," he said awkwardly, "Carol worked hard to clear this space for you." Clear this space. The words slid into me like pins. "Tell her I appreciate it," I replied. Silence. Then retreating footsteps. When the house quieted again, I lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. A crack ran across it like a crooked lightning bolt. It reminded me of fractures in relationships, the ones that start small, invisible, long before anyone admits they're there. The dryer thumped on the other side of the wall. Its rhythm steady, almost mocking. It wasn't the room that hurt me. It was knowing they believed it was enough. By the second morning, it was obvious they didn't know what to do with me. Not cruelty. Cruelty takes intention. This was something softer, quieter, the kind of discomfort people feel when a mirror is placed too close. I woke early, as I have my whole life. Decades of hospital shifts train your body to rise before dawn, even when the room has no window to tell you the time. I opened the door slowly. Warm, detergent-heavy air rushed in from the laundry room. Carol stood at the counter folding towels. She didn't turn when she heard me. "Oh, good morning," she said, still focused on the towels. I wasn't expecting you up so early. I've always been an early riser, I said, reaching for a glass. Old habits, she offered a tight smile. Right. I moved toward the kettle. She shifted aside just enough to keep polite, but her relief at my promise to return to my room was too quick, too bright. Back to the windowless room. When I returned with my tea, something new caught my eye, a plastic storage bin shoved into the corner. Not mine. Filled with winter coats, old boots, and holiday decorations. My room was already becoming a storage closet again. Around noon, I walked into the living room. Miller was on the couch, long legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up, polite but careful. Oh, hi, Grandma. Hello, sweetheart, how's school? Fine, a shrug. Mom said you're resting a lot. Did she? I eased myself onto the far end of the couch. The cushion dipped, and Miller subtly pulled her feet closer, as if my presence took too much space. I rest when I need to, I said gently. I'm not made of glass. She smiled briefly. A flash, then gone. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just an extra person in the house. I was an inconvenience being politely tolerated. Mom worries about smells like your medicine. She said it's strong. I swallowed slowly. Ah, she didn't mean it badly, Mila added quickly, though her eyes hinted she wasn't entirely confident about that. I gave her a gentle nod. I understand. And I did understand. Not the words themselves, but the feeling behind them. People often wrap their discomfort inside concern. It lets them sleep at night. Later that afternoon, I tried to help with dinner. Nothing difficult, just peeling a few potatoes at the dining table. Carol walked in, stopped mid-step, then smoothed her expression into a polite smile. Oh, you don't need to do that. I like helping. It's just that the kitchen is small, she said in a tone that apologized for things she didn't intend to change. And we have our system. Her kitchen, her house, and me, an outsider who didn't quite fit anywhere inside it. She took the potatoes gently from my hands, but the message was heavier than her touch. You don't belong in this space. I went back to my little room, closing the thin door behind me. The dryer thumped on the other side of the wall. Thump, 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 like a mechanical heartbeat. Dinner was quiet in the way that speaks louder than shouting. Daniel talked about work. Carol nodded. Miller joined in twice. No one asked how I felt. No one mentioned my hip. No one noticed when I struggled to stand. And then, as he cleared his plate, Daniel said the final soft blow. Mom, just so you know, the alarm is sensitive at night. If you need something, just knock on our door first instead of walking around. We don't want the system going off. He meant it kindly. Still, kindness can bruise. I'll stay in my room, I said. Carol sighed with such quick relief it stung. That night, lying on the narrow cot, I listened to the house exhale around me, pipes murmuring, floorboards sighing, faint laughter drifting down from upstairs. And beneath it all, the steady hum of the dryer. I wasn't angry, not yet, but something inside me shifted, quiet, steady, unmistakable. A woman can endure being inconvenient, but invisible, that becomes harder by the day. By the third morning, the house already knew how to move around me. Not with affection or curiosity, but with the polite avoidance people use when something fragile might break in their hands. I overheard them before breakfast. I hadn't meant to listen. The dryer was rattling so loudly it shook the nightstand, and when I opened my door to steady it, their voices drifted through the hallway. Just be patient, Daniel murmured. I am patient, Carol whispered back, her voice thin. But she's everywhere. Yesterday she stood in the hallway for 10 minutes doing nothing, just standing. She's recovering, give her space. I'm giving her space, Carol snapped softly. But she keeps drifting into hours. Drifting, a ghost apparently. I stepped back into my room, closing the door quietly. My hands trembled only a moment before I steadied them. Age teaches dignity. You learn to keep your face calm even when your heart is not. When I finally came out, they were already at the table. 3 plates, not 4. Oh, Carol said brightly. I didn't know you'd want to eat now. We assumed you'd still be resting. Resting, another word for staying out of sight. I don't mind fixing something for myself, I replied. That would be best, Carol said quickly. The stove is tricky. We'd rather you not strain yourself. But what she really meant was clear. Please don't cook in my kitchen. I made tea carefully, the way people do when they're trying not to take up any space at all. A few minutes later, Miller appeared, earbuds dangling around her neck. She hesitated, then held out a pale beige sweater with a loose thread. "Grandma, can you fix this? Mom said you're good at mending stuff." I took it gently. "Of course. And Mom said it has to be done before tonight. I need it for school." Before tonight, her mother's timing, not hers. I traced the seam with my fingers. "I'll have it done." Her smile flickered, more relief than gratitude. In the afternoon, I heard Carol on the phone, her voice low, sharp at the edges. "No, she's fine, just adjusting. She needs supervision." "Well, technically she doesn't, but Daniel insists." Supervision. As though I were a toddler wandering toward danger. I picked up laundry to fold, something to keep my hands busy, not because anyone had asked. When Carol saw me carrying a basket of clean clothes, she blinked with a startled annoyance she tried to hide. "Oh, you don't need to do that. Really, we have a routine." Routine. Another gentle way of saying please disappear. "I don't mind," I said. "Yes, but we prefer things folded a certain way." She took the basket from my arms with careful fingers as if holding something delicate. Maybe she was, maybe I was. That evening the smallest thing finally pierced through whatever patience I still clung to. My mug, a simple porcelain cup with a fading blue rim, sat on the dining table. It had been my husband's. "I brought it because some objects steady you when the world shifts too fast." Carol spotted it while wiping the table. "Oh," she said lightly, "we should probably keep personal items in your room. Just to keep the space uncluttered." Uncluttered, another tidy word for your things don't belong here. She placed the mug in my hands like returning something I shouldn't have set down in the first place. "Of course," I whispered. Later, I stayed in the living room longer than usual, watching the evening news. My hip ached, but the couch felt familiar, almost comfortable. 20 minutes passed before Carol appeared in the doorway. "Oh, are you not going to your room?" Daniel and I were planning to watch a show. Her smile was warm, her eyes were not. "I didn't mean to interrupt," I said. "You're not interrupting," she answered quickly. "We just like to unwind privately." "Long day, you know." "Yes," I said. "Long day." I picked up my mug, my unwelcome mug, and walked down the hall. Behind me, the door clicked shut. And when I sat on the cot, the dryer thumped again on the other side of the wall. A dull, steady heartbeat, in a room that was never meant for living. For a few minutes, I sat on the edge of the cot and simply listened. The low murmur of the television, Carol's laughter, Daniel's quiet voice, a family settling into their evening without me. But the worst part wasn't being left out. It was the realization settling cold and slow in the center of my chest. They weren't being cruel. No, cruelty requires intention. They simply no longer saw me. And the kind of invisibility that comes wrapped in politeness hurts far more than anger ever could. By the fourth day, the house seemed to shrink around me. Not in size, walls don't move, but in patience. You feel it like a faint draft at the back of your neck, a sign something is shifting, something is drawing closed. It began with the closet. I had noticed the day before that the sliding door didn't open fully. I blamed the frame, the age of the house, my hip, anything but the possibility that it was intentional. But the next morning, when I tugged harder, the door finally scraped open just far enough for me to see the truth. A cardboard box sat wedged inside, half full, Carol's handwriting on the side. Winter scarves, candles, mist. My clothes, neatly hung the first night, had been pushed sharply to the far right, squeezed tight, like they were apologizing for taking up space. I stood there motionless, the kind of stillness that comes not before tears or laughter, but before understanding. They were making room for their things while quietly erasing room for me. Around noon, I heard them talking in the hallway. Not whispering this time. That careful, clipped tone adults use when they don't want the subject to overhear. But no, she probably will. "We can't keep tiptoeing around her stuff," Carol said. "It's everywhere, the things on the bathroom counter, her lotion smells so strong." "She's recovering," Daniel said, but without conviction. "Just be patient." I am patient. But this isn't her house. She should keep her things in her room, all her things. I stood behind my door, my cane touching the floor, not to steady myself but to steady my temper. Later, Carol walked into my room without knocking. She stopped, startled to see me sitting on the cot. Her smile flickered before she forced it back into place. "Oh, I thought you were in the living room," she said too lightly. She moved to the closet, lifted the cardboard box, and placed it on the floor with intention. "We're trying to declutter," she said. "It's healthier, better energy flow." I watched her shift my coat aside, then nudge my shoes closer together as though their placement disrupted the balance of the universe. "This photo," she added, reaching for the framed picture of my husband, "might be safer out in the hallway, it's less crowded there." Safer, less crowded. A polite way of saying it didn't belong with me. She didn't ask. She simply walked out and placed the frame on a console near the front door between a basket of shoes and a ring of keys. I followed slowly, each step a small battle with my hip. "I'd like that photo in my room," I said softly. Carol stopped. A second of surprise before she composed her face again. "Oh, I just thought the shelf was too full, and guests will see it in the hallway. It's more decorative." Decorative. My marriage reduced to decor. "I'll keep it with me." Her lips tightened just slightly before she smiled again. "Of course, whatever you prefer." By late afternoon, the next small cut arrived. I had left my toothbrush and a small lavender lotion on the bathroom counter, the lotion I've used for decades. Carol's voice drifted down the hallway, exasperated. "Daniel, talk to her. My sinuses can't take that smell. It's like old furniture." Old furniture. Fitting, I supposed. Daniel came to my door, tapping lightly, shifting awkwardly. "Mom, can we talk for a second?" I opened the door. He didn't look at my eyes. "Carol's sensitive to scents. Could you keep your things in your room, just to make it easier for everyone?" Everyone meaning Carol. "Of course," I said. But later, when I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth, I noticed something small and sharp. My toothbrush had been placed in a disposable plastic cup. The kind used in budget motels. A message wrapped in convenience. That evening at dinner, something even smaller cut deeper. Carol asked Miller to pass the salad bowl. Miller hesitated, glancing at me first. "Oh, don't hand it across the table," Carol said quickly. "Just walk it around. We don't want anything spilled." Anything spilled meaning don't risk passing something over the old woman. I kept my face calm. It's surprisingly easy to do when you've had a lifetime of practice. After dinner, I tried to clear plates. Carol practically rushed in front of me, hands raised like I was reaching into fire. "No, no, Margaret, please sit. You'll tire yourself. We have a system." Their system, their rhythm, their home. I sat quietly while they cleared the table, laughing softly together. And I, hands folded neatly in my lap, felt myself shrinking inside their world. That night, in my small room with the dryer thumping like a slow heartbeat, I placed my husband's photo on the nightstand. The lamp flickered overhead. His soft smile looked the same as always, gentle, steady. "They're moving me out 1 inch at a time, aren't they?" I whispered. The dryer thumped once in reply. By the 5th day, I'd learned something important. When people want something from you, they first arrive wearing the mask of concern. Concern is a gentle key. It opens doors you didn't know you'd left unlocked. Daniel seemed restless that morning. He lingered near my doorway, walking away and returning again, like a man rehearsing a confession. Finally, "Mom, mind if I come in?" I gestured toward the folding chair Carol had placed in my room after removing my old stool. He sat as though unsure the chair would hold him. "We should talk," he began. "About things." Things, such a vague, easy word. "You're getting older," he said, folding his hands. "We just want to make sure you're prepared." Prepared for what? I asked quietly. "For the future, emergencies, those kinds of things." There it was. Not spoken plainly, but circling the point like a bird looking for somewhere to land. Carol appeared in the doorway, dish towel in hand, her expression arranged into tender concern. "We just want to help, Margaret. You've carried everything alone for so long. It's time we take care of you. To do that, we need to be included in certain decisions." "What decisions?" I asked. "Oh, nothing urgent," she said quickly. "Just paperwork, insurance, your medical directives. They can get complicated at your age." At your age. That phrase felt like a push down a long staircase. Daniel nodded. "Exactly. We were thinking maybe add one of us to the insurance, just in case." Or, Carol added smoothly, "let Daniel be the secondary beneficiary." So if something happens, you're protected. And the policy goes somewhere safe. Somewhere safe meaning into their hands. I breathed slowly. The same controlled breathing I once used in hospital rooms when families braced for difficult news. So, I said calmly, you want access to my accounts? Daniel stiffened. That's not what we said. It's what you meant. His mouth opened, then closed. Carol stepped forward, voice coaxing, eyes soft. Margaret, please don't make this difficult. We're trying to help. Help. Another soft word with a sharp underside. Just show us the documents. We'll take care of the details so you don't have to think about them. No, I said. Not sharp, not emotional, just steady. Everything froze. Mom, Daniel said, quieter now, we're trying to protect you. I don't need protection, I replied. I need respect. Carol's face flushed briefly before smoothing over. We are respecting you, she insisted. I looked toward the cardboard box in my closet, the disposable cup, the toothbrush, the mug they didn't want in the kitchen. The room they said was temporary. No, I said gently. You're not. Daniel inhaled sharply, the same way he did years ago when he was caught lying. If something happens to you, we'll be the ones handling it. Shouldn't we be prepared? You'll be informed, I said. But you won't be in control. A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Carol spoke, not with irritation but something colder. Sweetness over ice. Well, she said, smoothing her blouse, if you're certain you don't need our involvement, then please don't expect us to scramble when the time comes. Carol, Daniel warned quietly. She lifted her chin. I'm just being honest. But she wasn't being honest. She was being transparent. When they walked out, closing the thin door behind them, the dryer started again on the other side of the wall. A low, steady rumble filling the small room. And in that humming rhythm, something struck me with clarity. They weren't preparing for my future. They were preparing for my absence. And for the first time since arriving in that house, I felt it, the faintest flicker of something inside me. Not fear, not sorrow, resolve. By the sixth day, something had changed in the air. Not loudly, not with slammed doors. With something far more dangerous, quiet certainty. The kind of family adopts when they silently agree that you're the problem but don't want to name it. Smiles strained. Footsteps softened. Voices dipped when I entered a room. I felt it the second I stepped into the kitchen that morning. Carol stood at the stove stirring oatmeal. Daniel sat at the table typing on his laptop, each keystroke sharp and accusing. They both paused when they saw me. Oh, Carol said brightly, you're up early again. I am, I said, easing myself into a chair. My hip had stiffened overnight. Daniel closed his laptop halfway as if the air suddenly grew too crowded. Mom, he said, maybe you should rest more, you've been moving around a lot. I'm not made of dust, I answered gently. That earned me a fast glance, half irritation, half surprise. They weren't used to my voice carrying weight anymore. People forget that silence is often mistaken for weakness. Carol set a bowl of oatmeal in front of Daniel. Nothing in front of me. I waited. Once, twice, a third time. Oh, she said finally, did you want some? I wasn't sure if you were hungry in the mornings. Hungry, as if I were an unpredictable animal whose habits were unknown. Yes, I said simply. She served me a noticeably smaller portion. Half of Daniel's. Again, I said nothing. We ate in a silence so tight it practically hummed. Halfway through the meal, Carol sighed dramatically and set her spoon down. Margaret, things have been tense since our conversation yesterday. Tense? I asked softly. Well, yes, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear. You seemed defensive about the paperwork and everything. I was clear, I said. Daniel exhaled through his nose. We only want to help. But you're not helping, I replied. You're pushing. The room froze. Words hung between us like something fragile and dangerous. Carol stood abruptly and began wiping an already spotless counter. I really wish you wouldn't twist our intentions. Twist. A word people use when the truth doesn't match the version they prefer. Later that afternoon, foolishly, I tried to bridge the widening distance. Julia came by, my daughter. She brought flowers, supermarket daisies still smelling of plastic wrap. She hugged me with one arm, already glancing toward Carol. Hey, Mom, how's your hip? Better, I said. Stiff, but better. That's good. Carol said you've been overwhelmed. I blinked once. Overwhelmed? She's worried. Julia murmured in that tone people use for children. She said you've been misinterpreting things. Misinterpreting. Another polite word for inconvenient truths. Julia, I said calmly, I'm not confused. I didn't say you were confused, she replied, though someone had. Look, Carol and Daniel are doing their best, they're stressed. Miller has exams. Maybe you could meet them halfway. Halfway to what? I asked. Accepting blame for their discomfort, Julia sighed. Mom, you've always been proud. Proud. The word used to punish a woman for having boundaries. She didn't stay long. She rarely does anymore. Just give them grace, okay, she said before leaving. Grace. As if I were the one handing out small, cutting blows disguised as kindness. Later that evening, another small wound came. After dinner, I reached for my knitting bag, planning to sit in the living room. Daniel flipped through TV channels. Carol scrolled on her phone. Miller sprawled across the rug. Carol glanced up, startled. Oh, you're joining us. If that's all right, I said. Of course, Daniel said automatically, though his shoulders tightened. I sat in the corner of the couch, knitting steady, breath steady, present but small. A few minutes passed before Carol cleared her throat loudly. Miller, sweetheart, grab my blanket from upstairs. It gets chilly at night. Miller rolled her eyes but went. As soon as she disappeared upstairs, Carol leaned toward me. Margaret, maybe you should rest now. You've had a long day. I'm not tired, I said. Oh, but you look tired. Daniel nodded. It's been a lot lately. A lot for whom? For them. For the burden of my presence. I folded my knitting. I'll go to my room then. Carol exhaled quickly, relieved. Good, rest is important at your age. Everything becomes important at my age. I rose slowly, my hip aching, my cane tapping against the wood floor. When I closed the door behind me, the dryer started up again, almost on cue. But I didn't lie down. I stood there in the dim light, one hand resting on the cold metal bed frame. Something inside me had sharpened, not anger, not bitterness, clarity. Because once you realize people aren't misunderstanding you, you learn something far worse. They simply don't mind hurting you. And when a woman my age sees that truth, she stops waiting for grace. She starts preparing for consequences. On the seventh day, the house stopped pretending. There was no shouting, no slamming doors, no sharp words. Families rarely deliver cruelty through fire. They deliver it through neglect, impatience, and the quiet demotion of a person into a task. It began with laundry. I heard Carol outside my door mid-morning, speaking to Miller in a tone too bright, too justified. Honey, bring your grandmother's clothes downstairs. She's having trouble keeping up. I can toss hers in with ours, just to make things easier. Easier for whom? A moment later, Miller appeared, tapping on my half-open door. Grandma, Mom said you want help with your laundry. I looked at the neatly stacked shirts exactly where I'd left them. I didn't ask for help, I said gently. Oh, well, she said you did. She gathered the shirts anyway, cheeks pink with discomfort. I reached out, lightly touching her hand. Sweetheart, I can manage. Okay, she whispered, relieved, and hurried away. 5 minutes later, Carol arrived. No real knock, just a courtesy tap before entering. Margaret, you shouldn't make Miller feel awkward. She's only trying to help. I didn't make her feel anything, I said softly. Carol's eyes narrowed, barely but enough. Well, she came downstairs confused and upset. I'm trying to keep things smooth in this house, and you're making it difficult. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep your dignity standing upright. Carol sighed. Loud, heavy, performative. It would be nice if you contributed more around here. I know you're healing, but there's dusting, sweeping little things. There it was, the shift from guest to help. What would you like me to do? I asked. Her smile returned. Thin, triumphant. Just start with the floors and maybe the downstairs bathroom, only if you're up for it. Which meant, you are expected to be up for it, so I cleaned, not because she asked. I've been asked to do far more difficult things in my life. But because I needed to remind myself that my body still held strength, my own, not borrowed space. Later, while wiping the bathroom counter, I heard Miller in the living room. Mom said Grandma doesn't like it here. Daniel answered, sighing. That's not what she said. Well, that's what Mom told you. Carol laughed softly. I'm just trying to keep peace in the house. She's sensitive. Everything we do upsets her. Sensitive, me. The woman who raised 2 children through grief. The woman who worked hospital night shifts for decades. The woman who cared for a dying husband without a complaint. When I returned to my room, another box sat on my cot, labeled extra linens. Another inch taken away. My things, the few belongings I'd brought, had been shifted again, pushed into an even smaller corner as if shrinking my presence might make me quieter. I stood there staring at the box, feeling something inside me lower in temperature and sharpen at the edges. I wasn't living in a room. I was occupying a storage space they preferred to reclaim. Late that evening, as I sat on the narrow cot trying to knit a row I'd unraveled twice from distraction, I heard laughter floating from the living room. Carol's bright, ringing giggle, Daniel's deeper rumble, Miller's sweet high note, a family settling in comfortably, unaware of the woman listening from the dim corner of the house. Then, lightly, almost careless, I heard my name. "She's temporary," Miller's voice, unguarded, unfiltered. A pause, my heartbeat filled the space between their breaths. Carol's reply was soft, smug, delivered like an inside truth. "Yes, honey, only until she's back on her feet. Then she'll go home, it's better that way." Better for them. Never once did they wonder what was better for me. I set my knitting aside carefully, each movement deliberate. For the first time since I arrived, I felt no ache to be understood, no hunger for their approval. Something else moved in. Steadier, clearer, not anger, recognition. People reveal who they truly are when they believe you're unable to hear them. Later, as I eased into bed, I caught my reflection in the small mirror above the nightstand. A lined face, gray hair tucked behind one ear, eyes still sharp enough to see the entire truth. "You're not temporary," I whispered, "and you're not helpless." Behind the wall, the dryer hummed like a low, steady drum. And as I lay there, I realized something quietly profound in the smallest room they had offered me if I wanted to stay. They believed they controlled the ending. But endings are never written by those who try to push you out. Only by the one who decides to walk away. And I felt myself inching closer to that decision with every hour. On the 8th day, someone finally noticed me, not because I was in the way, not because I used a mug they disliked, not because my lotion offended sensitive noses. She noticed me because she looked, truly looked. Her name was Lily, Julia's daughter, my other granddaughter. 17 years old, thoughtful, soft around the edges, observant in a way most people outgrow. Not polished like Miller, not defensive like Daniel, not controlling like Carol. Just present, authentic. She arrived late afternoon without warning, holding a tote bag full of books she thought I might enjoy. When Daniel opened the door, I heard the surprise in his voice. "Lily, I didn't know you were coming." "I finished classes early," she said lightly. "Grandma's here, isn't she? I wanted to see her." A pause followed, too long for innocence. Then Daniel said, "Of course." But the hesitation told its story. Her footsteps came down the hallway, soft and sure. She knocked gently. "Grandma, it's me." I opened the door and there she stood. Freckles, a loose braid. Those warm, steady eyes. I hadn't known until that moment how starved I'd been for gentleness. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice catching. "Come in." She hugged me carefully, mindful of my hip. "Mom said you were staying here while you heal. I wanted to check on you." Her eyes drifted around the tiny room. The cot, the boxes, the flickering lamp, the absence of a window, the folding chair, the closeness of the laundry wall. She didn't gasp, she didn't scold, she simply absorbed it. "Is this comfortable for you?" she asked quietly. "It's manageable." "Manageable isn't comfortable." Smart girl. She sat on the cot beside me, setting down her tote. "You look tired." "I'm fine." "You've always said that," she murmured. "Even when you weren't." I didn't know how to answer her honesty, so I held her hand. A moment later, she noticed a faint bruise on my upper arm. I had forgotten it myself. A dark round marked the size of Daniel's fingertips from when he'd steadied me days ago, too roughly. His intent wasn't cruel, but intentions don't erase marks. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "No," I lied. "What happened?" "I slipped," I said. She raised an eyebrow in her mother's familiar way, but softer. "Grandma," I sighed. "Your uncle grabbed me to catch me. He didn't realize." She didn't accuse or question further. She just held the truth gently, aware of its fractures. "They're overwhelmed," I said, offering the last defense I had for my children. And you, she asked. Are you overwhelmed? No one had asked me that, not once. Yes, I whispered. But I can manage. There it was, manage. The word women my age use when we are never allowed to say we're hurting. Lily rested her head on my shoulder. You shouldn't be in this room. I'm just here until I'm better. She looked at me with eyes that didn't flinch. That's not why you're here. I didn't answer. She had spoken the truth too plainly to hide behind. We sat there in the hum of the dryer, in the faint detergent scent seeping through the wall, in a silence that felt more honest than anything Daniel or Carol had offered me. Then Lily said softly, You know you don't have to stay where you're not wanted. My throat tightened. They want me here. No, she said gently. They want the version of you that doesn't need anything. The version that doesn't take space or time or emotion. But you, Grandma, she took my hand. They don't see you. I closed my eyes. The truth always hits hardest when spoken by someone with no motive except love. What would you do, Lily? I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. I'd leave. Leave? Yes, I'd leave before they decided for me. I'd go somewhere safe, somewhere I could breathe. The word sat between us like something fragile and alive. Leave, it carried years of habit, fear, loyalty, but it also carried possibility. You deserve more than this, she whispered. She didn't mean a better room. She meant dignity. When she left, she kissed my cheek and squeezed my hand. Promise me you'll think about it. I will, I said, and for the first time I meant it. After she left, I sat with the book she'd brought, untouched. I listened to the house, to the silence, to the truth settling around me like dust. Daniel and Carol passed my door later, whispering. Did you know she was coming? Carol asked. No, Daniel said, but maybe it's good Lily saw her. Maybe it'll reassure her that Mom's fine. Fine. I looked at the bruise on my arm. The cardboard boxes. The narrow cot. The windowless walls. I wasn't fine. But I was awake. And every ending worth choosing begins with awakening. On the 9th day, the house felt smaller than ever, as if the walls were learning from the people inside. Closing in, inch by inch, the way guilt presses on a chest when no one says the truth aloud. But inside me, something else was growing. Not rebellion, not defiance. Memory. Memory of who I had been long before they reduced me to a burden. It began with the ache in my hip, that deep pulse that told me rain was coming. I sat on the edge of the cot, massaging the joint with slow circles, letting the silence stretch long enough to hear my own mind. I remembered lifting patients twice my size without complaint. I remembered stitching wounds with trembling hands after loss. I remembered holding my husband's hand through his final breath. I remembered surviving things my children knew nothing about. Strength doesn't evaporate. It just waits until you need it again. By late morning, Daniel and Carol had left. Miller was at school. The house sat in perfect, hollow silence. And for the first time since I arrived, it felt like the right moment. I went to the closet and pulled out the old leather folder I had packed before moving into this house. I had not touched it in 2 years, not since my husband died. It held every important page of my life. Birth certificates, insurance policies, property deeds, medical directives. A lifetime of signatures proving I existed long before my children began treating me like an obligation. I placed the folder on the cot and opened it with slow, deliberate care, as though any wrong movement might disturb the years preserved inside. Everything was exactly where I had left it. My handwriting, my husband's steady pen strokes, decades of decisions, discipline, responsibility. A record of a woman who had always handled her life without permission. As I sifted through the papers, my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. I answered. Mrs. Tenley, a man said, warm and professional. This is Attorney Stephen Parsons returning your call. I exhaled, feeling my shoulders loosen. Thank you. You said it was urgent, he continued. Are you safe to talk? Safe. Such a simple word, yet it cut straight through the air. Yes, I said. I am alone right now. Good. I heard the subtle shuffle of papers on his desk. You mentioned possible guardianship concerns and potential financial pressure. There it was, spoken plainly. No varnish. No softening, just truth. Yes, I said. My son and his wife have been asking about my insurance, my documents. They want to take over everything. And is that what you want? He asked. No, my voice did not tremble. It is not. Then we will take steps to ensure that cannot happen. He explained everything clearly, respectfully, never once in the tone people reserve for the fragile. He recommended updating my medical directive, adjusting beneficiaries, placing all assets into a revocable trust under my control alone. We can make it impossible for anyone to pressure you, he said. If that is your decision. It is, I whispered. Good, I will prepare the documents. We can meet tomorrow morning. Do you need transportation? I hesitated. My hip ached, the bus was impossible, and I no longer had a car. My granddaughter may be available, I said. Lily, he asked. Yes, he paused only a moment. She sounds dependable. She is. When the call ended, my hands trembled, not from fear but from a kind of relief that felt like breath after too many days underwater. For the first time in more than a week, I felt like the owner of my own life again. Around midday, I made myself tea. The simple act steadied me. As I lifted my mug, I heard the front door open. Carol's footsteps, brisk and confident, came into the kitchen. She stopped when she saw me. Oh, Margaret, you are out of your room. Yes, I said, stirring my tea. She blinked as if recalculating something. Right. Well, I assumed you would be resting. I have done enough resting. Her smile twitched, if you say so. She reached for a cabinet, then froze when she saw the leather folder on the table. What is that? My papers. A flicker crossed her eyes. Small, sharp, unmistakable. Why? She asked lightly. I am organizing them. Oh, her tone changed, acting casual in a way that was anything but. If you want, Daniel and I can review everything tonight to be sure it is all updated. I have already arranged that, I said. With who? My attorney. Silence stretched between us, taut and thin enough to snap. Carol inhaled through her nose, slowly. Margaret, you do not need a lawyer. We are your family. I know, I said, and that is precisely why I need one. Her cheeks colored, not with embarrassment but with restrained irritation she did not want me to see. Daniel will not like this, she said. I am not asking for his approval. Her mouth opened, then closed. She straightened her shoulders sharply as though pulling armor into place. Do whatever you think is necessary. I will. She left, and the silence that followed felt different. Not tight or suffocating. Open. Air that finally felt like mine. I carried the folder back to my room. The dryer rumbled behind the wall, but something in the sound had changed. It no longer felt like confinement. It felt temporary. For the first time since I arrived, I felt familiar to myself again. Not a burden. Not a nuisance. A woman with purpose. And there is no power on earth stronger than a woman my age who has made up her mind. On the 10th day, the house woke before I did. I heard it in the clipped voices, the hurried footsteps, the way Daniel cleared his throat as though preparing himself for an unpleasant task. Something had shifted. Maybe Carol told him. Maybe the tension had simply become too visible to ignore. I rose slowly, gathered my documents, and waited for Lily's text. She arrived without hesitation the night before. Of course, I will take you, Grandma, I will be there. If there is one blessing in a lifetime of motherhood, it is grandchildren. They arrive without agenda, carrying light into places their parents have dimmed. When I opened my door that morning, Daniel stood in the hallway. He had not knocked. He had been waiting. Morning, he said, good morning. His eyes dropped to the leather folder. What is that? My documents. For what? An appointment. He stiffened. With who? Carol said something about a lawyer yesterday. Is that true? Yes. He rubbed his forehead with the same gesture he used at 10 years old when he was caught lying. Why would you go behind our backs like that? Behind your backs, I repeated softly. I did not know I needed permission. That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. His jaw squared. We are trying to help you. You are making everything harder. By handling my own affairs. By doing what I have done my entire life. He looked at me then, truly looked, maybe for the first time since I arrived. And he did not like what he saw. I just do not want things to get complicated, he murmured. They already are, I said. You just have not acknowledged it. Before he could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Light, quick, familiar, Daniel opened it. Lily stepped inside, carrying her tote. Hi, Uncle Daniel, he stared. Lily, what are you doing here? I am taking Grandma to her appointment, she said. Clear, calm, unquestioning. Daniel whirled back toward me, eyes full of a betrayal I did not deserve. You told her instead of us. I told the person who asked how I was, I said. You did not. The truth hit him like a quiet slap. Carol appeared on the stairs. Oh, Lily, I did not know you were coming. I texted Miller, Lily replied. Miller stood behind Carol, silent. Carol descended, voice syrupy. Margaret, we should talk before you go. No, I said, we should not. The sweetness vanished. As Lily picked up the folder, Daniel tried one last plea. Mom, do not sign anything today. Please, let us talk first. As a family. We had 9 days to talk as a family, I said, but you discussed everything except me. His face changed, not dramatically, just enough. Lily touched my elbow. Ready? Yes. I stepped toward the door, but Carol called after me, her voice thin and sharp. If you do something drastic, Margaret, you will regret it. I looked at her. No, I said. What I regret is staying silent. The house went still. Then I stepped outside. The air was bright and clean, nothing like the dim hallway behind me. In the driveway, Lily smiled softly. You did well, Grandma. I did nothing, I said. You told the truth, she replied. We reached her car. She opened the door for me and helped me settle in with a level of care neither Daniel nor Carol had offered once. When she buckled the seat belt gently over my hip, I looked back at the house. A house becomes a home only when the people inside treat you like you belong. That place had stopped being my home long ago. Lily started the engine. You okay? Yes, I said, and felt the truth of it. I was going somewhere by choice. And choice is the beginning of freedom. On the 11th day, I learned how quickly panic turns to anger when people lose access to something they assumed would be theirs. Not love, not care, control. Lily drove us to Attorney Parsons' office, a modest brick building wrapped in ivy. No sterile marble, no cold grandeur, just a clean doorway and a receptionist who greeted me with respect. Mrs. Henley, she said, Mr. Parsons is ready for you. Lily leaned close. I will wait in the lobby. No, I said, come with me, she blinked. Are you sure you came for me, I said. Stay. Inside, Mr. Parsons stood to greet us. A tall man, steady voice, the kind people trust during difficult moments. He shook my hand gently, aware that dignity is something you can bruise. Please, he said, let us go through everything. We sat at a round table, equal to equal. He opened the prepared folder. Your children have no legal claim to anything at the moment, he said, but they may pressure you informally. Our job is to prevent that. He showed me the trust document. This gives you full control. No one can override your decisions, move you, or access your assets. I breathed in slowly. Relief rose through me like warmth after a long winter. And if you want, he added, Lily can be listed as your secondary trustee. Lily's eyes widened in surprise. She whispered, Grandma, you do not have to. I know, I said. That is why I want to. We reviewed everything. My home, my accounts, my medical choices. Every signature restored a piece of myself that had been quietly slipping away. When it was done, he gathered the documents. You are protected now, he said, truly protected. Thank you, I said. On the way out, my phone rang. Daniel, then Carol. Then Daniel again. Panic cannot stay quiet when control is slipping. Lily helped me into the car. Another call buzzed. I answered. Mom, Daniel's voice was tight and breathless. Where are you? Carol said you left with Lily. Why did you not tell us? I had an appointment, I said calmly. A legal appointment, he demanded. Mom, what did you sign? That is not your concern. It is my concern, he snapped. You are making decisions without us. Daniel insisted that the choices I made were too significant to handle on my own, too heavy for me to understand. He said I wasn't thinking straight, that the matter was too complicated, that I was being guided by others. His words were delivered with the familiar tone adult children use when they want control but package it as concern. He claimed I was being influenced, by the lawyer, by Lily, by anyone except myself. But I stopped him before he could go any further. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fragile. I had been managing my affairs for almost 80 years. I knew exactly what I was doing. When I drew the line and reminded him that I didn't need permission to make decisions about my own life, the silence on the phone was sharp and heavy. Then came the final accusation, the one that revealed the truth beneath all his arguments. He whispered that I had gone behind their backs. He wasn't upset about the decisions, he was upset about losing control. I ended the call. The moment the line went dead, my phone vibrated again. A long message from Carol, nearly a wall of text. I didn't open it. People rarely say anything new when they feel entitlement slipping away. When Lily drove me back to the house, the atmosphere met me before the door even closed behind us. The air felt thick, charged, the way heat rolls out of an open oven. Daniel stood in the center of the living room, flushed with a kind of indignation people feel when their pride is bruised. His expression wasn't heartbreak, it was righteousness. He said we needed to talk. I told him plainly that he needed to listen. I reminded him that being my son didn't give him authority over my life. Carol stepped out from behind him with her arms folded, insisting they were only trying to keep me safe. But I had seen the pattern too many times: help that wasn't help, concern that wasn't concern. They were trying to handle me, not support me. Carol insisted I was painting them as villains. I said I wasn't labeling anyone. I was simply naming behavior. They had forgotten that I was still a human being, not an obligation. The silence that followed was thin and brittle, like glass ready to crack. Then Daniel, softer now, asked what would happen next. I told him clearly. From now on, the direction of my life would be determined by me alone. His shoulders dropped as if he finally heard the truth he'd been avoiding. That night, I lay in the narrow bed with the dryer rumbling behind the wall. I stared up at the long crack stretching across the ceiling. When I first noticed it days before, it looked like damage. Now it looked like a seam, a line between the life I had been living and the life I knew I needed to claim. Once you recognize a doorway, the illusion of a solid wall disappears. By the 12th day, the mask of politeness had fallen away completely. Their smiles were gone, their voices tight, their movements sharper. Irritation is always easier to maintain than courtesy. When I walked into the kitchen to boil water for tea, Carol was scrubbing a frying pan so aggressively I wondered if she meant to scrape through the metal. Without looking at me, she announced that we needed to clear the air. I agreed. She turned toward me with her arms crossed tightly, saying she didn't like being framed as the villain. I reminded her gently that I hadn't called anyone anything. I had simply organized my own affairs. That alone had offended her. She said I had blindsided them by making major decisions without including the family. I repeated very calmly that my paperwork belongs to me, not to the household. Daniel entered the kitchen then. His jaw was clenched, his posture rigid. He wasn't malicious, just a man who had grown comfortable with the idea that his mother's life was something he could supervise. Many people fall into that pattern without noticing. Harm doesn't need intention. He asked why I hadn't trusted them. I told him that trust does not mean surrendering independence. He argued that it wasn't fair. I asked what exactly was unfair. An elderly woman maintaining her own autonomy so her adult children didn't have to carry the burden of responsibility. The quiet that followed was thick enough to cut. Then Carol said the words that revealed the truth she likely hadn't admitted even to herself. She said I was disrupting the household. Not my needs, not my recovery, not the circumstances, me. I nodded slowly as her meaning settled. With her voice rising, she listed every way my presence had unsettled their routines, their structure, their comfort. She said I questioned everything, made Miller uncomfortable, disrupted the balance of their home. She said I didn't fit. I held onto the back of a kitchen chair to steady myself, not my body but my heart. I told her quietly that I hadn't brought drama. I had brought boundaries. That word seemed to ignite something in her. She laughed sharply, saying that as long as I lived under their roof, boundaries were not mine to claim. Then she said she was tired of tiptoeing around me. She said they couldn't babysit an elderly woman who refused to fall in line. Her temper carried her into the next sentence, one she couldn't pull back even if she wanted to. She said if independence mattered so much, perhaps I should return to my own home. I stood still, absolutely still. Then I said she was right, they froze. Carol looked almost victorious, Daniel's face crumpled. He rushed to say she didn't mean it, but she had. And she had spoken honestly for the first time. I told them that I should go, that no one belongs in a place where they are seen as a burden. Daniel begged me not to leave in anger. I wasn't angry, I was done. He asked where I would go, I didn't answer. He mistook my silence for uncertainty. but I had already arranged everything. The moment Lily drove me to the attorney's office, the first step had been taken. Once a person begins to reclaim herself, she cannot return to the smaller version others preferred. I told him I would leave. Not instantly, but soon and safely. Daniel looked at me as if realizing a door he thought was locked had opened without warning. I reminded him I had given this place every chance for kindness, for warmth, for respect. Carol had offered none of that. She had given me a small room and even smaller expectations. There was no apology from her, not even an attempt. I thanked them both, not for their hospitality, but for their clarity. Then I walked down the hallway, my cane tapping softly. The sound felt louder than anything they said. That night, back in the tiny room, the hum of the dryer no longer bothered me. When a place becomes temporary in your mind, it loses its power to wound. I sat on the edge of the cot with my hands folded and let a single truth settle over me. I was done trying to belong where I was not invited to stay. On the 13th morning, I woke before the house. Not because of pain, but because something inside me had softened into certainty. The room around me, the cramped space, the storage boxes, the flickering lamp, had revealed its lesson 1 inch at a time. Today, I was ready to leave it behind. I dressed in clothes that made me feel like myself. I brushed my hair, slipped on the pearl earrings my husband loved, and tucked his photo into my tote bag. I wanted him with me. He would have understood. The house was silent when I stepped into the hallway. Silence can be comforting or oppressive. This one felt indifferent. I made myself tea, sat at the small kitchen table, and didn't hurry. Leaving with dignity means leaving on your own terms. At exactly 8 o'clock, I heard a soft knock at the front door. Lily. The moment I opened the door and saw her warm smile, I felt something inside me settle. She took my tote bag gently, as though she understood the emotional weight it carried. We were halfway down the path when Daniel came outside in a t-shirt, hair still mussed with sleep. His voice was thick with disbelief. He asked where I was going. I told him I was leaving. He looked shaken. Carol came out next, wrapped in a robe, her expression sharp and cold. She told me to stop making a scene. But I reminded her that a scene would require noise, and I was walking quietly. Daniel begged to know where I would stay. I told him I was going somewhere I chose, not somewhere I was placed. He insisted they were trying to help me. I told him their version of help had caused more harm than healing. He asked if I was angry. I told him I wasn't. I was simply finished trying to remain in a space where I had been reduced instead of respected. Carol insisted no one said I wasn't welcome. I told her she didn't have to say it. I had felt it every day. Lily touched my arm, reminding me it was time to go. I turned once more toward Daniel. I told him I loved him. That had not changed. But love does not mean allowing others to diminish you. Then I walked to the car with Lily. As we pulled away, Daniel stood on the porch, shrinking in the mirror until the house finally disappeared behind us. When Lily asked where we were headed, I told her to the Evergreen House, the place I had mentioned before. The place with the gardens and the wide windows. When we arrived, it wasn't fancy. It wasn't cold. It felt human, warm, bright, and calm. A nurse met us with a welcoming smile and told me they had been expecting me. My room had a garden view, sunlight pooling across the floor, a real bed, and a wardrobe meant for my belongings, not the household storage. Lily unpacked my things and placed my husband's photo on the dresser. The moment I sat on the bed, I felt something settle inside me that I hadn't felt in weeks, peace. And when I woke the next morning to sunlight touching my face, not the hum of a dryer, I realized I hadn't just moved rooms. I had reclaimed myself. Freedom, even in small portions, is something a woman my age never lets go of again. Later that morning, as I stepped into the courtyard garden, the world felt quiet and safe in a way I had long forgotten. The air was cool that morning, clean in a way that brushed the inside of my chest and made me feel awake for the first time in a long while. A faint rosemary scent drifted from a planter near the door, the kind of smell that brings old memories forward, soft ones, gentle ones. I walked slowly along the path, leaning on my cane, until I reached a wooden bench tucked beneath a small tree that hadn't yet decided whether to turn green or golden. I sat down, and let the breeze settle over my cheek. Moments like that, they remind you how fragile peace can be. If stories like this ever touch your heart, you're welcome to stay close. This little corner is for you. As I sat there, I saw her, Lily, coming through the gate with a paper bag held tightly against her chest. Her smile carried something warm enough to reach me before she even spoke. "There you are," she said, settling beside me. "I brought muffins, the good kind from that bakery downtown." A warmth spread inside me that had nothing to do with the sun. "You didn't need to do that," I murmured. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." We ate without rushing. The kind of quiet that holds comfort instead of tension. Then she reached into her bag again. "I got you something." She pulled out a small succulent planted inside a ceramic pot shaped like a teacup. "For your window." It looked a little empty. I traced the rim with my finger. "It's perfect." She studied my face with those thoughtful eyes of hers. "You look lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "I just didn't realize how heavy things had become." Lily nodded gently. "Mom called me last night." "Did she?" "She said you ran away." Lily rolled her eyes. "As if you're 16. I laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in weeks. "I walked out the front door quite slowly," I said. "That's exactly what I told her," Lily replied. "She said it was all very dramatic." "That's her favorite word." "She's upset," Lily said softly. "She's upset because I made a choice she didn't approve of," I explained. "Not the same as being harmed." "Daniel's upset too," she added. "I know, you should hear what he said." I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, not yet. I don't need their explanations right now." She lowered her gaze. "Do you want to talk to them eventually?" "Eventually," I said. "Not today." "And not to justify anything. Just to talk. When they're ready to see me, not as a responsibility, not as a disruption, but as myself." Lily let out a breath that softened her whole posture. "Good." We spent the next hour wandering slowly through the garden. I showed her the roses blooming outside my window. She pointed out a squirrel with a crooked tail. We laughed in that soft way people do when the world finally gives them space to breathe. Before she left, she hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I closed my eyes, feeling her warmth settle into my bones. "You saved me," I murmured. She pulled back. "No. I just reminded you that you're still allowed to choose yourself." When her car finally disappeared down the road, I stayed on the bench, watching the breeze carry away the last bits of sorrow that clung to me. Later, I unpacked the rest of my things: my husband's photo, my books, the knitted shawl I'd made last winter. I placed the succulent on the windowsill where the sun warmed it gently. The room felt like mine for the first time. As evening settled in, I finally listened to Daniel's voicemails. The first was panicked, the second guilt-laced, the third cracked and tired. "Mom, please call me. I need to know you're okay. I don't understand why you left. Carol is upset. Miller is upset. I'm upset. Please just tell me you're all right." I listened without anger. Hurt can echo even when no one intends to cause it, but I didn't call him back. Not yet. Not until I could speak without making myself small to comfort others. Tonight was for me, for quiet, for fresh sheets, for a bed that didn't groan as if rejecting my weight. A room that welcomed me, not tolerated me. And rest, real rest, feels different when you've earned it the hard way. By the morning of the 15th day, something inside me had settled. A truth I should have learned years ago: leaving isn't the opposite of loving. Sometimes it's the only way to love yourself enough to keep living. The light that filtered into my room was soft, warm, almost tender. I lay there listening to the gentle hum of Evergreen House, the rolling cart in the hallway, the muted laughter drifting from the dining room, footsteps meant to include, not avoid. Every sound carried purpose. None of it felt like an apology for my existence. I dressed slowly, moved toward the garden, and sat where the roses had bloomed bright and full, as if they'd been waiting for me. My succulent reached toward the sun the way I understood better than anyone. Growth is simple once the shade is gone. For the first time since leaving Daniel's house, I let myself feel everything. Not bitterness. Not triumph, just truth. People think aging means becoming smaller, but it isn't aging that shrinks you. It's the way the world treats you when you slow down. I had been shrinking myself for years without noticing, lowering my voice, softening my needs. making myself light enough that no one felt the burden of carrying me. But walking out of that house, Lily at my side, showed me what I'd forgot. I was only ever small because they needed me to be. A young nurse walked by, greeting me with a respectful nod, not pitying, not hovering, just seeing me, and something inside me loosened. I pulled out my phone, dialed Daniel. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, I'm all right," I said softly. His exhale was sharp, like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Why didn't you tell me you were leaving?" "I did tell you," I said. "You just didn't want to hear it." Silence. Then a break in his voice. "I miss you." "I miss you too," I said. "But I couldn't stay there, not with things the way they were." "I know," he whispered. "I didn't realize how much pressure Carol was putting on you. I should have done better." "You should have listened," I said gently. "I know." He didn't make excuses. For the first time in years, it sounded like understanding. "Will you ever come back?" he asked quietly. "Not to that house," I said. "But you can come to me when it's to see me, not manage me." "I'd like that," he said. We spoke a little longer, careful and quiet, like people relearning how to speak without hurting each other. When I hung up, the garden felt brighter. Even the roses leaned toward me as if welcoming the shift. Lily came in the afternoon with another plant, a trailing ivy. "It'll grow beautifully along your window," she said. She placed it gently on the sill, then sat beside me on the bench. "You look peaceful," she said. "I feel peaceful." "You did the right thing, Grandma." "Yes," I said. "I did." We sat in sunlight for a long while. When she left, she hugged me tightly. "I love you." "I love you too." I stayed in the garden until the light softened into evening, then returned to my room, where nothing smelled of resentment and nothing reminded me to disappear. As I closed the door, I said a truth out loud, one that had waited decades to be spoken. No one decides who I am, not anymore. And if anyone listening has ever felt themselves shrinking, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden, I hope you remember this. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. And if this story touched something in you, whisper a thought, share a moment, leave a word. Sometimes, a single voice is enough to remind another woman she isn't alone.